Hello, this is Carrie again, and I have another video for you today. Sorry, this is shaky. Yes, I'm back. I did a video on everything that's been something is moving on everything that's been going on. It's the short version is it's been a 2020 kind of year, but we're husbanding on. Yeah, we're just trying this anyway. That video should be live either the same day or the day after this comes out. Anyway, but so that's that. All right, so today I'll be doing a review of this book, Learn to Paint Acrylics in 50 Small Paintings, and I just love this book. In fact, mostly I have a bunch of like how-to painting books for watercolor and for stuff. I start doing it, and then halfway through, I'm like, I can't finish this. But this book, I have been working diligently on this book, following the steps. There's a lot to like here. Let me go through the basic intro. There's a lot to like here, and there's a couple of complaints. So, what there's a lot to like here is they show you all the paintings you're going to make when you get started. You start with an introduction, like a lot of these books do. They tell you the properties of student grade versus artist grade materials. And then you go and they explain different types to you, brushes. So it's basically like if you're starting from scratch. So if you're starting from scratch, he goes through and he explains like, a bunch of stuff. Things he doesn't go into too much is color theory, cool versus warm colors, that sort of thing. So I have been using canvas paper, Strathmore canvas paper for my paintings, and I'll show you some of the paintings that I've done. So the thing that I really, really like about this book, and the thing that I think makes this probably the best how-to book on any subject I've ever had, and I mean that literally, is that you start off easy and it gets increasingly harder. That seems like it should be common sense, but trust me, starting off easy and getting increasingly harder is literally not how many books do these things. You start off with like two colors, maybe three colors. Yeah, you start off with two colors, titanium white and Mars black, and you just get a little harder as you go. Like it's literally you get more colors, you get more steps, like, and then like once you do the first one, so like if you start off and you go, let's see, this is the last one that I've done from this book. So if this was the first one, you'd be like, "Oh my god, I can't do this." But what he does in this book, or she, I don't even know, what he or she does in this book is, you start off very, very easy. I'm gonna flip through how you do, and every lesson teaches you something new that you didn't get the previous lesson. So like each lesson you're sort of learning something and you're building on what you've learned before, which I realize sounds really, really obvious, but I cannot tell you how many how-to artist books start with the watercolor version of this book. Do I have the watercolor version of this book? The watercolor version of this book, the second lesson has you drawing a sneaker. Hold on, let me show you the watercolor version of this book, what lesson like 2 and 3 is on this book, which someone who is like, this is their second watercolor lesson, there's no way. This is lesson, okay, here it is. This is lesson 1 for the watercolor version of this book. Look at this. Like, this is insane. There's so much stuff in here. There's glazing. There's, like, using masking fluid. There's, like, all this stuff that, like, there's no way I would ever give to a beginner who's never done anything in watercolor before. Like, whoever did this book needs to be smacked upside their head. Because it's just like, and then the thing that's annoying is that then some of the later lessons are easier than the first lesson. Sorry, all right, I'm gonna put this back before I start having a heart attack on that book. But anyway, so with this book though, by lesson 4 you can actually do this lesson. So it starts you off and it assumes that you've never had any acrylic training in your life, and that by the time you get to lesson 4, you can actually do the 4th lesson based just on what he's built on in the previous pages. So, and as you keep going, you know what? I don't know if I ever did this one. Maybe I did this one, but this one doesn't look familiar. Maybe I did this one and I skipped. I don't know, but I definitely did this one. So like as you keep going and as you keep building, he's teaching you new things that you can then use to the following lesson. You don't have to go in order. So the one of the two, I'm working on 2 different ones right now, but one of the 2 that I'm working on is a later lesson. Hold on, let me see if I have it. Is this one. So, even though it's, let's see, lesson 16 and I'm still only on lesson like 10. So I skipped ahead to do this one just because I had the colors mixed in. So that's what I really like about this book. It's very easy to follow. The directions sort of build on each other, all the things that I've talked about before. What I don't like about this book, and it's not the fault of the book or anything, but the colors that you need for this book, if you guys follow my channel for a long time, you know, I started with colored pencils, doing adult coloring, and then I moved on to watercolor. I buy sets a lot. I love buying sets of watercolor. I love buying sets of colored pencil. Trying to find the specific colors that he wants in a set has been extremely difficult, and I wish that he had worked backwards and instead found some commercial sets or something. Now, in part, it's not his fault because whereas watercolor sets, they all basically follow the same few principles. It's dual primaries plus a purple plus a bunch of, you know, plus a few earth tones, yellow ochre, so on and so forth. Acrylic sets tend to be all over the map. So in some ways, it's not really his fault. But I do want to put that out there that if you're a person like me who likes buying stuff in sets, it's very hard to find a set of, you know, like 6 colors that has, you know, a set of 8 colors that has these 8s or whatever. So there's that. The other thing is some of the colors that he asked for are pretty expensive pigments. Cerulean Blue he uses a lot. It's a fairly expensive pigment. I've actually been doing this for like 3 or 4 months, and I just now bought Cerulean Blue. Same thing with Cadmium Orange. It's a relatively expensive pigment, and you can mix red. You can mix cadmium yellow light and cadmium red medium to get the cadmium orange that he wants. But it's a lot of pain, and I ended up having much more waste than I wanted. Cerulean Blue, I could never get quite the right hue. The same thing with Cobalt. Now, some sets, some brands will come with the hue version, so you're not paying for the cerulean, and you can do that. So he talks about that earlier on in the book to get student grade paints. But if you followed my channel for a long time, you know that I say that you should start with the best that you can afford. And the reason being that you don't want to have problems with your work and have your problems be related to the materials. So like I feel for myself when I'm starting out that I want to get the best quality materials that I can afford. That are not necessarily sort of like, you know, there's some brands of acrylic paint that cost like, you know, $50 for one tube of one color. You don't need to go that far. But I do like to get sort of artist grade materials so that I know that if I'm struggling with something, the problem is me and not the materials. So having said that, speaking of materials, let's go over some of the paintings that I've done. I actually got relatively inexpensive canvas paper. I got Strathmore 6x6 canvas paper. It's about like $4 on blick.com, and I'll give a link to it if I can even link to it, because there's Dick is in the name. So sometimes those links get erased. Anyway, so so this is the first one I think I did. Is there one in here or two? Nope, there's oh yeah, there's 2. See, I knew. So this is the first one from the book. So I can show you like what I've done with absolutely no acrylic training at all of any kind, and not really needing to draw, just following the directions in the book. So this is me just following the directions as he's written them out in the book. And oh, let me show you. Actually, one of the things that I found that made doing this a lot easier is that I ended up going with, just randomly because I was struggling to find sets, I found that Golden Open Acrylics has 2 different sets of 8. And I ended up buying both of those sets of 8. And if you buy both of those sets of 8, that's most of the colors that you're going to need for pretty much everything in the set, except for Cerulean Blue and Chromium and Cadmium Orange. For Cerulean Blue, you get like a manganese blue hue that you can use, but I've been mostly taking ultramarine blue and adding white. This is what I've been doing for the skies. And so that I found Golden Open Acrylics to be really very fun to use, very low odor. I really enjoyed this, and I'll do a separate video on Golden Open Acrylics. You don't have to get a huge set either. This is the golden, just the golden heavy body acrylics. Oh, also the open acrylics are slow drying. That I really appreciated coming from watercolor and not really you know, knowing I also got this set more recently, and these dry super fast. So I also like the open acrylics that dry a little bit slower because they give me a little bit more time to fix mistakes and work on it as I go. So I got this, and I'll do separate videos on those. But that's what I've been using is the golden open acrylics, and this is on Strathmore paper. Anyway, I hope this isn't shaking. It's kind of shaking a little bit, but I'll. So anyway, so this is just literally just following from the first. So from the first one that you saw, this is me never having done anything in acrylics before, not really knowing how to draw, and just following directions. And I still don't really know how to draw, but I'm able to follow his directions for the most part. There's been a couple of problems. The other thing is because I've been using the slow drying acrylics and I'm slightly impatient, sometimes some of the colors will reactivate as I'm doing the following lessons, but that's only because I'm not waiting long enough for the open acrylics to dry. This was supposed to be a cardboard box, but I messed up, and then I don't know, I messed up, and then I decided, all right, I've learned enough. This was my second attempt, and this is me. And when you get materials, you should follow the directions. They specifically said not to use water for thinning out open acrylics because they're different than regular acrylics, and I use water anyway, and this is what happened. So don't use water to thin out open acrylics. Follow their directions, and this is the most recent one, which I also did in a larger version. I don't know where the larger version is, but the larger version I actually like better than the center version. Anyway, there's that, and then this one I sort of like my own Christmassy thing that I'm finishing and working on, and then this is the lesson that I started working on based on that. So, and this is on Jackson's acrylic block. So this was on Strathmore acrylic paper, and then this is on Jackson's acrylic block. I do have some canvas and some other materials there, but I want to kind of play with this before I start getting on the acrylic blocks. He sort of mentions palette knives, but I found mixing with a palette knife made my life a lot easier. It was a lot easier on the brush. And the last thing that I don't like about this book, and I just want to show you the lessons, is the fact that so acrylics dry really fast. Even open acrylics, even if you use like a slow drying thing, it's kind of a little bit of a hassle. There's not really, so like if let's say the first one was working on blacks and whites, and say you mix too much, which is very likely to happen because when you're first starting out I had no idea how much to mix. The next one will be in red, and you really won't use the grays that you've mixed before until like 4 lessons later. So I wish that there was a little bit more. Like I understand why he did it, so people don't get bored using the same colors over and over again. But you know, but what he does do to correct that, because I think he's aware that people are going to want to work on similar colors, is that you can then he gives you like some other ones to try, so you can skip ahead if you want to. So let's say you were doing let's say you did this lesson 4 and you want to use similar colors, he'll tell you what other lessons sort of use similar colors and themes, if you want to try to sort of save some of the paint to reuse that. So you can do that too, as well as just flipping ahead. So that's really the biggest, the 2 biggest complaints, which are, you know, outside of his control. It's not his control. It's not his fault that acrylics dry really slowly. But there are a lot of really good lessons here, and you sort of learned different things and how to create effects, and then you can use that for your own, like whenever you're ready. So that's about it. So overall, I really like this book. I'm sort of looking forward to some of these later lessons, to be able to do some of the things that I want to do. Of the lessons later on that I'm looking forward to the most, it's probably the ones where you create like a glass or Borble effects. Like this one it's a late lesson. This is like a 42 out of 50, but I'm very much looking forward to doing things like this, which I struggle with both watercolor and colored pencil, but you know, with acrylics he makes it look super easy. So that's it. I definitely recommend this book if you would like to learn acrylics and you want to learn sort of how to there's a little bit of abstract, but a lot of it is making sort of like, you know, painting what you see kind of thing. And there's a lot of really good lessons. And so I'm sort of looking forward to taking however long it takes to go through the book. And I can definitely see myself going through the entire book and doing basically all the lessons in the book. Um, yeah, so I really like this one. And let me know if you want me to do more videos on acrylic paint. I'm definitely going to do a video on the open acrylics and probably one on the golden acrylics. Yeah, so I will see you guys next time, and I hope you guys like this video. Bye.